Instead of running from the blizzard, a poor black innkeeper chose to stay behind, offering shelter to 15 stranded strangers, even though he knew his supplies wouldn't last. And when he learned that one traveler was still missing, he risked his life venturing into the White Fury to find her before the storm swallowed her whole. What he didn't know was that the fragile woman he saved that night would soon give him a chance that would change his life forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. The wind struck the windows like fists. Calvin Brooks stood alone in the empty lobby of Beacon Lodge, watching the snow pile up against the glass. The radio crackled to life. Severe weather alert for Flathead County. Blizzard conditions expected through Christmas Eve. All travel strongly discouraged. He turned it off. He didn't need a weatherman to tell him what he could already see. The lodge was quiet. Too quiet. No guests for 3 weeks now. Just him and the ghosts of better days. Calvin walked over to the fireplace, brushing his fingers along the stone mantel. His father had built this place 40 years ago, stone by stone, log by log, a refuge for travelers caught in Montana's brutal winters. Now it was dying. "Still here, Calvin?" He turned to see Tom Hendricks, the postman, stamping snow off his boots by the door. "Where else would I be?" Tom shook his head. "Bank called me yesterday. Asked if I'd seen any activity here. They're coming after New Year's. You know that, right?" Calvin nodded. He knew. 3 months behind on the mortgage. The final notice sat on his desk upstairs, right next to the photo of his father. "You could sell it. Get something for it before they take it." "To who?" "Nobody wants an old lodge in the middle of nowhere." "Then leave. Go back to Seattle. You had a good job there." Calvin looked out through the window. The sign outside glowed faintly through the swirling snow. Beacon Lodge, light always on. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "It's better to share your last candle than to curse the dark." Calvin grabbed his coat. Time to check the generator. In a storm like this, the power could go out any minute, but the light would stay on. It always did. He was halfway to the back door when he heard something, faint at first, then louder. Knocking. Someone was at the front door. He opened it. A blast of wind and snow hit him in the face. "Please," a voice crasped, barely audible over the storm. "We need help." He pulled the door wider. They stumbled in, wet, shaking, desperate. 1 person, 2, 5, 10, more kept coming. "How many of you are there?" he asked. 15, a man said, snow crusted in his beard. "The roads are completely blocked, trees down everywhere. We've been trying to get through for 2 hours. Calvin looked over the group. Young and old, a mother clutching a little girl, 3 truck drivers in Carhartt jackets, 5 people in expensive hiking gear, a thin man with a military patch on his coat, 2 teenagers holding hands, all of them cold, all of them scared. "Come in," he said. "Get away from the door." They crowded into the lobby, dripping onto the hardwood floors. The little girl was crying softly. Her mother tried to calm her, but her own teeth were chattering too hard. Calvin moved fast. "Listen up. Take off anything wet. There are blankets in that closet. Grab what you need. Bathrooms are down that hall. I'll get the fire going." "Do you have rooms?" one of the hikers asked. A young guy, maybe 25, with expensive sunglasses pushed up on his head. "I have rooms," Calvin said. "But the heat's better down here by the fireplace. We'll set up camp in the lobby tonight." "What about food?" one of the truck drivers asked.
Good question. Calvin did a quick mental count. Enough for himself, maybe for 4 days. For 15 people, he'd figure it out. "I'll manage," he said. The veteran caught his eye. Something unspoken passed between them. The look of men who'd been in tight spots before. Calvin went to the kitchen, opened the cupboards. Soup cans, pasta, rice, coffee, a little frozen meat, bread. 2 days' worth, maybe 3 if he stretched it. He filled the coffee pot, set every pan he owned on the stove for soup and pasta. In the lobby, people were settling in. The hikers huddled together, whispering. The truck drivers had claimed a corner. The mother sat with her daughter near the fire, the little girl's face finally showing color again. Calvin brought out blankets, steaming mugs of coffee, and a thin pot of split-pea soup, watered down to stretch it. "Is this all you have?" the young hiker asked, frowning. "My group paid for a hotel in Whitefish. We shouldn't be stuck here." "Then go," Calvin said evenly, nodding at the door. The kid looked toward the window. You couldn't see 10 feet outside. He sat back down. "Thank you," the mother said softly. "I'm Sarah. This is Emma. You saved us. When we saw your light, we didn't think we'd make it." The veteran extended a hand. "James Cortez, Army, retired." Calvin shook it. "Welcome." "You run this place alone?" "Yeah."
One of the truck drivers stood up, a big guy in a red flannel shirt with a name tag that read Dave. "Hold on," he said. "We need to talk about this. How long's this storm supposed to last?" "Radio said through tomorrow," Calvin answered. "That's 2 days. You just said you don't have enough food. What happens when it runs out?" "We ration." "That's not a plan, that's starving slower." Dave looked around at the others. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Maybe some people should leave. Make space for the rest." "No one's leaving," Calvin said firmly. "Why? Because you say so?" "Because they'll die out there." The room went silent except for the crackle of the fire and the wind howling outside. Little Emma started crying again. Sarah held her close. Calvin took a deep breath. "Look, I get it. You're scared. But my father taught me something. It's better to share your last candle than to curse the dark. We have food, we have heat, we have shelter. That's more than a lot of folks out there tonight." "There are more people out there?" one of the teenagers asked quietly. A woman in her 30s wearing a fleece jacket spoke up. "Our friend Evelyn. We got separated on the trail. She was behind us. We hoped she made it down another way." Calvin's stomach tightened. "How long ago?" 3 hours? Maybe 4? 4 hours. In this storm? In sub-zero cold? "She has gear," the young hiker said quickly. "An emergency blanket, matches. She knows what she's doing." "That doesn't matter if she can't find shelter," James said quietly. Calvin walked to the window, pressed his hand against the freezing glass. Somewhere out there, a woman was alone in the dark. Maybe alive, maybe not. He thought of his father, the promise, the light. "What would you do?" he asked the picture. But he already knew. He stood, pulled on thermal layers, flannel, his heavy coat, grabbed an emergency rope, flashlight, and first aid kit. Downstairs, James was still awake, keeping watch by the fire. "Can't sleep either?" James asked. "No." "I had the gear." "You going out?" "Yeah." "That's a bad idea." "I know." "You could die." "I know that too." James rose slowly, his knees cracking. "I'd go with you, but these old bones ain't what they used to be. You'll be faster alone anyway." "I will." "How will you even find her?" I thought a moment. "The trail they were on passes near here. If she got turned around, she might have followed it. There's a ravine about a half-mile out. If she fell..." He didn't finish. James nodded. "Take the rope. If you're not back in an hour, I'll call search and rescue." They won't come out in this. I know, but I'll call anyway. Calvin tested his flashlight. The beam sliced through the darkness. Strong, steady. There's something you should know, James said quietly. That woman, Evelyn, her friend said she's wealthy, important, runs some big foundation. Doesn't matter, Calvin said. Just thought you should know who you're risking your life for. He looked at him. Would it change anything if she were poor? James smiled faintly. No, guess it wouldn't. Calvin tied one end of the rope around his waist, the other to the porch railing. If he lost his way, the rope would lead him back. Hey, James said, your father will be proud. Calvin didn't respond. He just opened the door and stepped into the storm. The cold hit him like a wall. Even through all his layers, it sliced straight to the bone. The wind shoved him backward. Snow stung his face, blinding him. He lowered his head and pushed forward. The flashlight revealed nothing but white. No trail, no landmarks, just endless snow. He counted his steps. 50, 100, 200. The rope pulled tight behind him. He'd reached its limit, 40 yards maybe, not far enough. He untied it, watched it disappear into the dark. Now he was truly alone. He pressed on. "Evelyn!" he shouted. His voice vanished into the wind. Nothing. 700 steps, 800 steps. Then the flashlight caught something, a splash of color in the white. Red. He stumbled toward it. A glove, women's size, North Face brand. She's been here. He swung the light in wide arcs. 20 feet ahead, a scarf caught on a branch. He followed the trail, heart pounding. Then his boot hit air. He dropped flat, just in time. The ground fell away beneath him, a ravine. He aimed the light downward. 10 feet below, a dark shape, half buried in snow. "Evelyn?" No answer, no movement. Calvin's heart slammed against his ribs. He tied the rope around a tree, tested it, then lowered himself down hand over hand. The shape grew clearer. A woman, mid-40s maybe. Her skin ghost pale, lips blue, eyes closed. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse, weak, but there. "Evelyn, can you hear me?" No response. He checked quickly. No obvious broken bones, but her body was rigid with cold, severe hypothermia. He had to move her now. Calvin stripped off his own coat, wrapped her around her, and lifted her onto his back and started climbing. One hand pulling, the other holding. His muscles screamed. Halfway up, his grip slipped. He slammed into the wall, pain exploding through his ribs. "Don't drop her," he gasped. "Don't you dare drop her!" He pulled again, inch by inch, until finally his hand found the edge. He heaved them both over, collapsing in the snow. For a moment he just laid there, chest heaving, the wind roaring in his ears. Then he got up, hoisted Evelyn onto his back, and started trudging toward the faint glow ahead. The lodge light. Step after step. His legs barely obeyed. The weight on his back was crushing, but the light grew brighter. Finally, his foot hit the porch step. He nearly fell. The door burst open. "Calvin!" James shouted. Hands reached out, the truck drivers. They pulled Evelyn inside. Calvin stumbled in after them, collapsing to his knees. "She's alive," he panted. "Barely." Sarah was already moving. "Get her near the fire. Blankets, hot water, not boiling, just warm." They moved fast, working as a team, stripping off Evelyn's soaked clothes, wrapping her in dry blankets, and pressing warm bottles against her skin. Calvin sat against the wall, shaking, watching. Every muscle ached, but she was breathing, her chest rising, falling. James handed him a mug of coffee. "You did it, man. You actually did it." I could barely hold the cup. "Hang on, ma'am. Beacon Lodge is still shining."
When Calvin opened his eyes, the world was quiet. For a second, he didn't know where he was. Then the smell of pine wood and coffee brought him back. He was on the couch in the main lodge, still wearing the same clothes, boots thawing near the fire. It was morning, or something close to it. The storm had slowed. Light filtered through the frosted windows, turning the room silver. He sat up, every muscle stiff. His ribs throbbed. Across the room, James sat with a blanket over his shoulders, sipping coffee. "You're awake," he said. Calvin blinked. "What time is it?" "Almost 10. He rubbed his face. "How's Evelyn?" James nodded toward the corner of the room. "See for yourself." Evelyn lay on the couch by the fire, bundled in blankets. Her face had color again. Her eyes were open. Calvin stood, moving carefully toward her. She turned her head as he approached. "You found me," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled faintly. "You were easy to find. You left half your wardrobe in the woods." She curved a small smile. "I was trying to follow the trail markers. Guess I failed." "You made it further than most would have. How you feeling?" "Like I was hit by a snowplow," she murmured. "But alive, thanks to you." I shrugged. "You would have done the same." She looked at him for a long moment. "Maybe, but you did. That's the difference." I didn't know what to say. "Can I ask, why risk your life for a stranger?" I looked into the fire. "Because someone once did the same for me." Her brow furrowed. "Your father?" He nodded. "When I was 12, I fell through the ice behind this lodge. He jumped in without thinking. Saved me. Got pneumonia after. Never really recovered. But before he passed, he told me, 'Never let the light go out here, son. Not while someone needs it.'" Evelyn's eyes glistened. "That's a beautiful promise. It's a heavy one sometimes. Worth keeping, though." "Yeah, it is." She extended her hand. "Evelyn Morrison." He shook it. "Calvin Turner. You run this place?" "More like keep it from collapsing. It was my parents' dream. Been tough lately, though. Storms like this don't help." Evelyn studied him. "How tough?" "Enough that I've been thinking of selling. Hard to compete with resorts that have saunas and champagne minibars." "That's a shame. This place has heart." He smiled. "Heart doesn't pay heating bills." She chuckled weakly. "You'd be surprised." I raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" She shifted slightly, pulling the blanket tighter. "You ever heard of the Aurora Foundation?" Calvin frowned. "The charity? Funds rural hospitals, schools, that Aurora Foundation?" She nodded. "I started it." Calvin blinked. "You? You're the Evelyn Morrison?" "Guilty." For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He'd seen her name on news articles, gala invitations, fundraisers, but he'd never connected it to a woman lying half frozen in a snowbank. "You must think I'm crazy," she said. "I came out here for quiet, to get away from all of it. Phones, meetings, cameras. I used to love hiking when I was young. Thought I could find that peace again. And instead you found a snowstorm. And you," she added with a small smile. I laughed softly. Guess fate's got a sense of humor. Hours passed. The storm outside finally broke. Through the windows, the snow had stopped falling, leaving the world outside blanketed and still. The guests slowly packed their things, ready to head out when the plows cleared the road. Evelyn stayed by the fire, sipping tea, her eyes thoughtful. James came over, handing Calvin a folded note. "He wanted you to have this," he whispered. Calvin opened it. Inside was a short message written in neat handwriting. "Your father's light still shines through you. Don't let it fade." He looked up. Evelyn was by the window, watching the sun break through the clouds. He walked over. "You didn't have to write that." She said, "I wanted to. It reminded me why I started my foundation, to help people who don't have much but give everything they've got anyway. I'm just doing what anyone would do. No, not everyone would walk into a blizzard for a stranger." He said nothing. The silence was peaceful.
Then she turned to him. "Tell me the truth. How much do you need to keep this place running?" He shook his head. "I'm not taking your money." "It's not charity," she said firmly. "It's gratitude." "I mean it. I didn't save you for a check." "I know." She smiled gently. "That's why I want to help." I sighed. "You're stubborn." "So I've been told." They both laughed. She held out her hand again. "Then promise me something. If I send a few friends your way, donors, travelers, people looking for peace, promise you'll keep the light on." Calvin met her gaze. "Always." By evening, rescue teams finally reached Beacon Lodge. They checked everyone, cleared the roads, and began escorting guests out safely. Evelyn stood by the door, bundled up and ready to go. The sky outside was turning pink and gold as the sun set over the snow-covered mountains. She looked back one last time. "Thank you, Calvin, for everything." He smiled. "You stay warm this time." "I will." She paused, then stepped closer. "You should know. I'll be back. Beacon Lodge isn't done yet." He chuckled. "I'll hold you to that." She nodded once, then walked out into the light.
Snow fell softly over the mountains again, a year to the day since the storm. But this time, Beacon Lodge wasn't dark or silent. The windows glowed warm gold. A new sign hung above the door: Beacon Lodge, a place of light. Inside, laughter filled the air. Families gathered by the fire. Kids built snowmen outside the porch. The smell of hot chocolate drifted from the kitchen. Calvin Turner stood behind the front desk, checking reservations, a clean flannel shirt replacing his old coat. His ribs still ached sometimes, but he didn't mind. They were a reminder of what mattered. James walked in, cane tapping the floor. "Full house again," he said proudly. "Third week in a row. Guess people finally figured out how to find us." "Or someone made sure they did," James said with a knowing smile. Calvin grinned. "Yeah, someone." He still remembered the day the envelope arrived, 3 months after the storm. Inside was a letter with no return address. "For the man who keeps the light burning. A small thank you from the Aurora Foundation." And beneath it, a check, enough to rebuild the lodge, install new heating, fix the roof, and pay off every last debt. He never cashed all of it. Half went to restoring the community shelters nearby. He knew Evelyn would have wanted that. Now, Beacon Lodge was more than a business. It was a refuge, just like his father had dreamed. That afternoon, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside. A woman stepped out, wearing a long winter coat and a red scarf that matched the one she'd lost in the snow a year before. Calvin's breath caught. She pushed open the door, smiling as the warmth hit her face. "You weren't kidding about keeping the light on." "Evelyn," he said, walking around the counter, "you made it back." "Didn't I promise?" "You did, though I wasn't sure you meant it." She looked around, her eyes glowing with pride. "You did all this?" "We did," I corrected. "Couldn't have done it without you." "Oh, I just sent a few friends your way," she teased. "You did the real work." He chuckled. "Still as humble as ever, huh? Coming from the guy who risked his life for a stranger, takes one to know one." They shared a quiet moment by the fire, watching the guests laughing and the flames dancing. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "You gave this place a soul." Calvin looked toward the window where the snow sparkled in the afternoon light. "It already had one. I just made sure it didn't go out." That evening, as twilight deepened, everyone gathered outside. Evelyn stood beside Calvin as he flipped the main switch, lighting up the new wooden sign out front. "Beacon Lodge," she read aloud. "A place of light." Calvin smiled. "Dedicated to my father and to everyone who ever got lost in the dark." The crowd clapped, some tearing up.
The fire pit crackled, throwing golden sparks into the night. Evelyn turned to him. "You know, I used to think money was the only way to change lives. Turns out, sometimes it's just one person refusing to give up." He looked at her, the fire reflecting in his eyes. "Sometimes all it takes is a little light." She smiled, "And someone brave enough to carry it." They stood in silence for a moment, snow falling gently around them. Above the mountains, the northern sky shimmered, green, blue, and violet streaks twisting together in a silent dance. Evelyn gasped, "The northern lights?" Calvin nodded. "Happens once a year if the clouds break right." She stared in awe. "It's breathtaking." He looked at her and said quietly, "My dad used to say, 'Every light in the sky is a soul that never gave up.'" Evelyn's eyes softened. "Then tonight, your father's watching." Calvin nodded slowly and smiling. They stood together under the colors, the world peaceful and the fire warm, and the light from Beacon Lodge glowing steady and strong.